Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. British home front. Yeah, I've been wearing the same shirt for 3 days. So what? Original link to the video top of the description. Preemptive like, let's go.
Rationing. British home front. World War II.
My name's Connor. Hi. Original link to the video top of the description. Right below that, link to the Discord. Click on it. Send you right over there. Would love to have you. Let's get ready to learn. Go.
The British home front. World War II. Though much of the Second World War was fought in Europe and across the globe, precautions were taken in Britain on the home front to ensure readiness against all the domestic dangers that the nation might face during war. Between 1938 and 1939, the government started to take precautions and began planning for wartime. It was believed that civilians would be needed on the home front to help with the war effort by planting vegetables to supplant rationing and to help as air raid wardens. The government also established a home guard. The home front came to occupy a unique position in the British collective memory of the Second World War, regarded as a period in history during which time the British people came together in a spirit of collective fortitude. And rationing would play a key element in home front preparation. By the time the Second World War broke out, the British government had already begun planning food distribution for wartime. The government was conscious not to repeat the mistakes and
I just want to say, I said this before, but it seems like, all right, I don't want to lose my spot. It seems like this is the first time that British people, like in London, everyday people, were in severe harm's way, like in very much in harm's way. Since, you know, you're known for your amazing navy and the fact that you're an island off the coast of Europe and not directly on Europe, so you don't have to be like France or Poland and Germany always being afraid of land invasions. But so even going back centuries, I feel like World War II, World War One, no, World War II was World War One. I forget. Were there air bombings by Germany of England in World War One? I don't know. I don't think so. If there were, then they must have been very small in scale compared to this. But this must have been a very, like, shocking moment, like, generationally for Britain.
Failures that occurred during the First World War. It wasn't until 1918, in the final year of the First World War, that food rationing was introduced and the Ministry of Food was established. Before 1918, the distribution relied on supply and demand, and those on low incomes went hungry, and riots often broke out. In 1936, the British government established the Food Department, which was responsible for stockpiling sugar and wheat while making preparations for a national rationing scheme. By 1939, the government already began to advise the population on how to establish their own food stores. In 1939, the president of the Board of Trade told Parliament that, "I see no objection to the accumulation by households in peacetime of small reserves of suitable foodstuffs, equivalent to about 1 week's normal requirements. Household reserves of this kind would constitute a useful addition to the total stocks of the country." Leaflets were distributed advising on how best to store food at home, emphasizing tinned food and to preserve essentials including flour, tea, and sugar. One booklet issued by the Canned Foods Advisory Bureau suggested that in the event of war,
is tea really an essential? Like flour, wheat, and tea. Like flour, sugar, and tea. It's like, oh no, there's no tea! There's no tea! We're out of flour. Forget that. We're out of tea. It seems like a bit of a stretch.
or the nation would be immediately rationed with a limited supply of meat, butter, cheese, milk, flour, tea, sugar, potatoes, and cereals. So Britain was well prepared for when war would break out. The British government formally introduced rationing on January 8, 1940, as a means to cope with wartime shortages. Britain was an island and imported most of its food and supplies by air or sea. When war broke out in 1939, the majority of food supplies came to Britain by sea. Only 1/3 of Britain's food supplies were produced domestically. The Axis powers, seeing a weak spot, attempted to disrupt Britain by intercepting supply ships headed for the country. Germany attempted to cut off supplies to Britain by targeting Allied merchant vessels. At the start of the war, German U-boats began to destroy merchant ships in the Atlantic, and the British government needed to take action to ensure the nation could survive in such times of shortages so that its armed forces and civilian population could continue to be fed. It therefore introduced rationing.
Isn't that what the Lusitania is? Lusitania was a British ocean liner that was launched by the... Oh, I thought the Lusitania was an American ship. Why did I think the Lusitania is what brought the U.S.? Man, that was a fail on my part. I mixed up.
Rationing was controlled by the Ministry of Food, which had been established in 1918 during the First World War. It meant the limitation of food and other supplies for everyone in the country, and also ensured that every member of the public would be able to obtain a fair share of the national food supply at a reasonable price. This ensured equality in distribution and was also designed to prevent people from hoarding food and inflation. Rationing was organized around the idea of a flat-rate individual ration to ensure that each individual obtained his or her full share and no more. This required the consumer registering with a retailer that could control distribution. This system failed to accommodate for the diverse needs of individuals from heavy workers to children. Differential rationing systems were envisioned individuals. This system failed to accommodate for the diverse needs of individuals from heavy workers to children. Differential rationing systems were envisioned prior to the war but were never introduced. To ensure rationing worked, ration books with coupons inside were distributed to everyone, and with these books each person had to register at a shop. Ration books were introduced shortly after national registration was introduced in 1939. The National Registration Act established a national register which required individuals to produce their new identification cards on demand, or for them to be presented to a police station within 48 hours. 44 million ration books were in circulation by 1939. The light brown colored RB1 ration book was distributed to everyone above the age of 6, with younger children receiving the green RB2 ration book. Coupons were marked off by the shopkeeper to show that a purchase had been made. Among the rationed items were bacon, butter, and sugar. By 1942, this was expanded to other foods including milk, meat, cheese, eggs, and cooking fat. A typical weekly allowance for one adult would be 1 fresh egg, 4 ounces of margarine, 4 ounces of bacon, which was approximately 4 rashers, 2 ounces of butter, 2 ounces of tea, 1 ounce of cheese, and 8 ounces of sugar.
A week? Is that just stuff like you aren't expected to just survive on that for a week? That's like to supplement what you already have. Like, so like that's not like you're expected to survive on that for a week. It's just you do what you can for a week, and like this is what you get on top of whatever else you're scrounging up.
Exceptions were made for members of the armed forces, the Women's Land Army, minors, pregnant mothers, and children who required additional nutrients. From August 1940, it was a criminal offense to waste food which could see you fined or sent to prison. Inspectors checked bins, shops, and restaurants. It was also illegal to serve fish and meat at the same time to one customer. In a cinema in London, an assistant enforcement officer was served such a combination and fined the manager and waitresses who served him once he had enjoyed
after he ate it
and finished the meal.
Why did he finish it? Why didn't he just say, all right, you just served me this. Here it is. Why did he have to eat it? Perks of the job.
One of the most common foods during this time were powdered eggs and Spam, which came from the United States. Spam was a tinned meat that lasted for a long time without refrigeration and didn't cost many points to purchase. The Ministry of Food encouraged everyone to grow their own food with the Dig for Victory campaign. Cartoon characters like Potato Pete and Dr. Carrot were created to encourage such an enterprise. Land was used to create allotments, which was created to encourage cartoon characters like Potato Pete.
Let's make more Potato Petes.
And Dr. Carrot were created to encourage such an enterprise. Land was used to create allotments, which was a form of self-sufficiency that contributed to the war effort. Pigs, chickens, and rabbits were reared, and vegetables were grown everywhere that they could, including gardens, public parks, and sports fields. By 1943, the number of allotments numbered 1.4 million. Alongside these allotments, national restaurants were established in urban areas to provide affordable, nutritious meals for working people. From 1941, there was also an expansion of school meals and work canteens. As well as food, other items would be rationed. Petrol was the first item to be rationed in September 1939, prioritized for the armed forces. Clothes rationing started on June 1st, 1941, and women painted their legs using gravy and drew a line on the back as a substitute for nylon stockings. There were also instructions in magazines on how to make clothes from old curtains. A reaction to rationing was the illegal black market. Spivs were able to get rationed items, either stolen or obtained by other dubious methods, offering them for sale without coupons, usually at a greatly inflated price. Shopkeepers also kept special items back behind the counter just for their favorite customers.
What if you got caught?
Fines could go up
Would you be like shot or something?
to £500 and a possible 2 years in prison if caught.
That's it. Was I too harsh? And maybe I was a bit too harsh there.
Forgers operated under little scrutiny, owing to the lack of police presence, issuing forged ration books and coupons.
That makes sense.
In 1944, 14,000 ration books were stolen during an air raid and sold for a profit of around £70,000, equivalent to £3 million today. Rationing continued way past the war and didn't end until 1954. This was because of Britain's damaged economy from the war and the high debts it owed to the United States. The Second World War fundamentally changed the state's relationship with society. Everything was brought under the scrutiny of the government. Food rationing was a prime example of this. Rationing meant a reconfiguration of the nation's debt in accordance with the nutritional science of the day, alongside the availability of certain types of foods. Advice was produced on how to best cook and what was available. Food from foreign sources, especially occupied areas in the Commonwealth colonies, were in short supply. French cheese, for example, became unavailable, and it has been said that people had a fond taste for bananas because they were so difficult to get a hold of. Britain was also diverting its food to parts of Europe, which was rebuilding and suffering from starvation as a result of German occupation. Rationing would continue for as long as the British forces were heavily involved in post-war conflicts across the world.
Cool. Cool video. Awesome. Great channel. Let's keep learning. Next one. Bright Leap for no. I have some other videos ready. Interesting. I'd love you if you could answer my questions. Loved if you learned something or can teach me something. Original link, top description, Discord. Love to have you. See you next time, guys. Bye.